afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our session. Thank you for joining today. Before we start our last session, I would like to welcome Director of Higher Education, Shri M. Nagarajan sir. Sir, we all will be glad if you say a few words to our faculties, sir.
Thank you. First of all, my congratulations to the SCOPE team who have organized a series of webinars, especially for the Faculty of English. English is an international language and it helps us communicate and connect with the world. So if we want to go for global thinking, uh, we need to understand and effectively communicate in English. So the Faculty of English who are playing a vital role in enabling the youth to learn the language of the world. I congratulate everyone for joining us in all these webinar sessions. And today is the final session of this first series of webinar conducted by Scope organization. And it's a Government of Gujarat supported initiative to promote English to students across Gujarat and to empower them in their careers. I also welcome the speaker for today, who has kindly consented to deliver a lecture on the topic of usage of English. And I wish all the best for the SCOPE team and also all the people who have joined us on Teams platform and also on Facebook Live. And we will surely keep doing more activities like this. We plan to engage more with the Faculty of English across Gujarat and across India. And we would like to empower you all to do your jobs better in transforming the destiny of our youth by building them confidence and communication skills. Thank you everyone for joining us.
Thank you. Namaste, sir. Thank you. Thank you for your kind words, sir. Now, I would like to introduce our today's presenter, Dr. Atnu Bhattacharya, sir, who is a professor and dean, Center of English Studies, School of Languages, Literature and Cultural Studies, from Central University of Gujarat. The COVID-19, welcome, sir. The COVID-19 pandemic has created a major disruption in the social context. However, plays a significant role in the language and literature teaching, while online teaching is the new preferred mode of teaching today. Quite a few reports point out that the teachers miss the social and contextual interaction in the classroom, right, sir? So this talk will at times point towards certain online strategies that can be adopted to make the social context relevant in online teaching. We will be running question answer session also at the end of the webinar, so you can raise your queries. We will definitely try to cover all the questions today. So again, welcome Dr. Bhattacharya sir. You can start the session now. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mansi ma'am, for inviting me to the SCOPE event. I'm really happy to come over here.
Pleasure, sir.
I have been part of SCOPE for a very long time now. When it started, actually, I was a part of SCOPE, so it's wonderful to come back, and I'm very happy that SCOPE is organizing this series of webinars, which is absolutely important in today's world.
Yes, sir.
I would like to thank Nagarajan sir for having me over here. What we're going to do today is, I'm sure that all of you have done over the past 4 days quite a lot of apps and different sorts of platforms that can be used for online teaching, etc. Now, one of the things that has been troubling me for the last 7-8 months, primarily during the COVID times, is the fact that many teachers, and there's been a lot of reports that have happened over a period of time, many teachers have said that they miss the social element in online teaching, primarily because classroom teaching is very different from online teaching. I mean, we have been all teaching online, so we are aware of what goes wrong in online teaching. I mean, I just had a class in the morning today, and one of the things that you immediately see on a Zoom class or a Google Meet class is you can't see the face of the students because they mostly switch off their videos, and primarily because they don't have high bandwidth. So video streaming takes a large amount of bandwidth, and it takes a lot of time to kind of, set up the class. So when you don't see the faces of students, you don't really know whether what you're saying is getting understood or not getting understood. Are they listening at all? Are they doing something else, etc.? So that social element that is a part of classroom teaching has been missing, and there has been quite a lot of reporting on this in recent times. In a recent study that was done, quite a few teachers actually were interviewed, and they said that the thing that that they really miss about language teaching online is the fact that they miss the chats and the discussions and the feedback that happens in the class, the cup of tea maybe after the class with the students, or going out and just smiling at them. So that aspect is missing. Now, this has been kind of with me for a bit of a time, and I was thinking whether this can be done online as well. So what I am trying to do today is I'm trying to look at that social aspect, and can we use the online platform for bringing in the social. So there are two things in the presentation that I'm going to do today. There is a PowerPoint presentation that I'm going to share with you in a few moments. What I plan to do today is I'm trying to look at, there is a theory behind the social, what we call the social in language teaching. There is a bit of a theoretical framework. We'll just touch upon it. We'll not spend too much time on it. And of course, there are different sorts of things that you can do online to bring back the social. So we're going to look at both these aspects and see what can be done, what is possible. And then I'm open to suggestions, your comments at the end of the session. And I hope to have a fruitful discussion at the end of it. So let me share my presentation with you first. I hope all of you can see it.
Yes, sir, we can see it.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So this is the topic of presentation for today. So I'm going to look at contextual interaction in online teaching, a very, I think, a very important topic in today's world, especially in the COVID world that we are living in, where we still have not started effectually our classroom teaching. Though I know that in some regions, classroom teaching has begun, at least minimally. So what we are going to do today is we're going to look at context and how interaction operates in that context. And what I mean by contextual interaction, of course, is the social interaction that we have in a classroom. And how can we bring that social or contextual interaction in online teaching? So that is the focus of my talk today. I'll try to speak for about 40-45 minutes, and then I'll be open to questions after that. So this is the outline of what we are going to do today. So I'll try to explain to you what I mean by contextual interaction. I've given you a bit of a background by what I mean by contextual interaction. But we'll look at a definition of contextual interaction. And then we're going to look at context, because context can be understood in terms of the context of practice and the communities of practice. So the context of practice basically is what we do in the classroom. So when we practice teaching, or when we teach in a classroom, there is a certain context in which we teach. So we prepare our lessons, we go to the classroom, we interact with the students. There is a certain social element to that interaction. We give them feedback, we take their questions, etc., etc. So that context of practice determines how we teach. But there are also communities of practice. I'll try to explain at the end of the presentation what I mean by communities of practice. Because what is happening right now is that we have extremely brilliant things happening around the country, how people are innovating online. But unfortunately, we don't really know until it comes in the newspapers or on the TV, what teachers are really doing to handle the situation. So the teaching community, as a practicing community for teaching, is something that that we are missing. In a sense of, we do not really have a platform where we can share our failures, our successes, etc. So I'll talk briefly about how to build those communities of practice. The third thing that we're going to look at is what are the choices to bring back the contextual interaction or the social interaction in an online classroom. And finally, we are going to theorize a bit what social interaction is, how do we define social interaction, and how can we do it online. So this is the basic outline of what we're going to do today. Now, as I said, we're going to begin with a brief definition of what is contextual interaction. Now, Byram and Grundy, who are two very famous educationists based in the US, say that when we are dealing with teaching of languages or teaching of any educational purpose, then we need to remember that learners are social actors. So they are social beings who live in specific relationships with the language they are learning. So they have a special relationship with the language that they are learning. If it is English, then they come from, maybe in India most of the times, from other language backgrounds, and they come to learn English in a certain context. And there are also relationships which are determined by the socio-political and geopolitical circumstances in which they live. So they also come from social context, they also come from political context, they also come from geographical context. And all these things, the social, the contextual, the political, the geographical, has an impact on language learning. Now, all these things, the social, cultural, political, or geographical, are contextual. They form what we call the social. And this social has an impact on how you learn a language. If you didn't have, let's say, a certain kind of a social background, if you come from a very socially disadvantaged position, then learning a language becomes much more difficult for you. As opposed to that, of course, if you come from a socially advantageous position, then learning a language, because you have more access to language, your access to language increases. Now, this is something that we need to keep in mind when we are talking about language learning. And this is exactly what we are going to look at when we look at different sorts of possibilities online to bring back this social into the classroom. So just to again repeat what I began with, that the social is something that belongs to the learner's context. So learners come from certain contexts, and when we are teaching languages, or especially when we are teaching English, which is not a language that is very commonly used across the spectrum, what we need to keep in mind is that our learners come from different social backgrounds, different cultural backgrounds, different geographical backgrounds, and that affects their language learning. And that is an important part of language learning, to understand as a teacher how context affects our own understanding of languages. Now, keeping this in mind, therefore, this is the bit of theory I said, I warned you that I'm going to start with a bit of theory. So this is the bit of theory that we should keep in mind before we go into the actual practice of online teaching. Now, there are certain issues in contextual interaction. There are certain issues in social interaction, especially when we are learning a language. Now, Mark Warshauer, in a book he published in 2004, which was called actually Social Inclusion and the Digital Divide, he says that technology seems to help students to learn a language. I mean, that is probably now a lot of people are saying that technology is kind of a boon for learning a language or teaching a language, because there is a lot of language available through technology. So it's not only dependent on the teacher now. So when a teacher goes to teach English in a classroom, it's not simply what the teacher says in the classroom that the students learn. What you also have is a large amount of language available through technology, through social media, through the internet, through interactions on chats or message boards, etc. So there is a lot of language that we cannot control, but students have an access to. And so technology is seen as the perfect playground for learning a language. But Warshauer warned that one thing that we need to remember is just because you have access to technology doesn't mean that you're automatically going to learn language, because it depends on also the social background that you come from. So if you are if you belong to a certain socially disadvantaged position in the society, then even if you have a mobile phone which has internet access, or even if you have a computer with an internet access, it does not automatically mean that you will learn language, because there is a digital divide that operates. So what Warshauer was trying to say was that you need to have, in order to have technological inclusion or digital inclusion, you also need to have social inclusion. They go hand in hand. To have technology in the hands of socially disadvantaged does not automatically mean that they're going to learn it. It also means that they have to be socially included. So that is one point that we need to keep in mind. The second thing on the slide is that if you know what teledensity means, teledensity is the number of mobile phones per 100 of the population. Now in India, and this data is from 2019, the teledensity is 87, which basically means that out of 100 people, every 100 people in India, 87 people have an access to a mobile phone. Now we don't know how many of them have a mobile phone with an internet access, but I'm guessing even out of 87, let's say around 70 people have access to a mobile phone with an internet. It means that a large amount of people in the country, we have 1.3 billion people, have access to the internet through the phone. But again, studies have shown that just because you have a mobile phone with an internet connection doesn't automatically mean that it is going to develop into education. So when we are doing online teaching, I have heard people say things like, well, Geo is there and people have access to internet, so what is the problem in learning online? Well, it's not as simple as that. Just because you have access to internet doesn't automatically mean that you're going to learn. Learning requires frameworks, learning requires help, learning requires a social context. And until unless all these three are present, learning doesn't happen. So that is the second thing that we need to remember. There's a bit of a study, people like Vulgar have shown how local social contexts play a very important role in learning. So it is the local social area that you live in, or the family that you live in, or the community that you live in, and the kind of atmosphere that you have in that community also determines how much of learning happens in that community. So we have to keep that in mind. Of course, we know that there are issues of internet safety. You must have read reports of Zoom bombing. So you have Zoom classes where unwanted people come in, or you have lack of internet access, or the internet is not stable, etc., etc. So you have questions of internet safety, especially if you are dealing with women on the internet in online classes, or if you are dealing with children on the internet. So I've just given you a website which gives you very, very interesting insights into how to maintain internet safety. I will not go into that. I'm sure that all of you are now aware of how internet safety plays an important role in determining what we are doing. Building communities of practice, I'll talk about a bit later. So I'm leaving that for now. And most importantly, of course, when we are talking about teaching online within a social context, the most important aspect is access. So how many people have access to the internet? Now, when I say access to the internet, I mean not simply access for your WhatsApp messages or access for checking your Facebook or your Twitter account. Access also means having a stable internet over a certain period of time. For example, if in a day there are 4 hours of teaching, 4 teaching hours, then you need access to the internet, a stable internet, for at least 4 hours. And those 4 hours are important because you really can't reschedule a class if a student does not have access. Now, there are some interesting stories that are associated with this access. For example, in Africa, there was this entire, and it is still going on, there was this entire project, later it was across the world, to give a laptop with an internet connection to a large number of students who were socially poor or socially disadvantaged, so who did not have access to technology in that sense. And these laptops were just $100, which was about, let's say, 7,000 rupees. And they were given access to the laptop and the internet for about 1 year. And there are a large number of studies that have happened. So access can be given, and this was done by a series, quite a few organizations coming together. So access can be given by large-scale organizations. In Gujarat, for example, we can think of the Namo tab, where tabs were given to college students and to school students. Unfortunately, a study has not been conducted on how students have used it. but it'll be interesting to see how Namo tabs have been used over a period of time. The second story the URL that I've given over here deals with something called English in Action, and this happened in Bangladesh. Now, the English in Action project was primarily carried out keeping in mind that Bangladesh had a very low resource, it's a very low resource country. So you do not have stable internets, you do not have, many of the schools in the rural areas do not have computers, teachers are not trained, teachers did not have access to technology, etc. So what they did was an English in Action project. It was a government, the government of Bangladesh and Open University UK and British Council and DFID, quite a large number of organizations again came together and started this English in Action project. So briefly, there is quite a lot of things available on the net if you type in English in Action. What they did primarily was they loaded training materials for teachers on USB drives. And then these USB drives were given to master trainers who would go to rural areas and would carry their own laptop. And then they would give a laptop to the teachers over there. I mean, not to all of them, but the main teacher over there. And all the material will be used for training and then will be copied onto another pen drive to that teacher in that area. And that teacher would then train other teachers in the area, etc. So it is something called the cascade model that was used. But along with that, they also combined TV. So they tied up with the Bangladesh television, and every Saturday, and this is a very popular TV, it's called Bangla Janla, the window of Bengali, if you translate it, where teachers and experts in the field would actually come for 1 hour and talk about in a almost like a news format. So people will be interviewed, they will talk about what are the good things to do in a classroom, etc. And these TVs were set up in these small areas and teachers would come at certain points of time and watch these programs on TV. So along with the USB drive, TV was used. I gave you these examples to show that technology has been used to provide access, depending on the context that you are in. We have examples from Gujarat as well. For example, the entire, I remember in Babasaheb Ambedkar Open University, there was this entire project of a mobile van where English was taken to villages, etc. So there is a possibility of using technology for giving access and to provide social context for that access. Now, when you keep all this in mind, I'm sorry for the long introduction, almost the background to what I'm going to do. We need to keep this in mind to understand what I'm saying for actual use of technology for using the social interaction pattern or the contextual interaction in today's world in online teaching. Now, I said that we're going to look at context of practice. So when we teach in the classroom, what do? What we do is we give feedback. For example, if students ask a question, we give them feedback. If students do something, we give them feedback, etc. So that is one part of it. The second thing that we do is we problem solve. So if a student has a problem, either personal or professional or learning related, we try to solve them. We also scaffold. A scaffold is a support activity, so we support them in different ways. So if they don't have material, if they don't have access to certain kinds of things, if they find it difficult to learn something, we help them by scaffolding that activity. Now, scaffolding can take different forms, but I'm using the word in a more general sense. So scaffolding can be an activity with support. For example, I give them a dictionary to find out the meaning of a word. That can be also scaffolding. But scaffolding can have a general meaning where I support them in different ways. And of course, as a teacher, you provide them with emotional support. So effective support is an important aspect of our teaching when we teach in a classroom. So feedback, problem solving, scaffolding, affective support, etc. So you provide them emotional support in different ways. And that is an important part of our teaching because remember, kind of students look up to you as someone who will guide them. So that part of the emotional aspect of teaching is an important aspect of language learning because we know that languages can be learned if you are emotionally attached to something. So how do we do it online? Because obviously when you are not in the classroom, Online teaching changes all this. So how do we give feedback? How do we problem solve? How do we scaffold online teaching? Or how do we provide emotional support? As I was saying, if in a classroom, most of the time you can't see the faces of the students because they have switched off their videos. When you are not aware how many of them are listening, when most of the time you are actually concerned about completing your syllabus or thinking about the nature of evaluation or assessment that you're going to do at the end of the teaching, then obviously all this goes missing. In a classroom, this is present. So even in the middle of a lecture, a student might say, okay, I need help with this, etc. And you can do that. In an online class, it becomes more and more difficult to do it because you are in a time bound, you have screen time, you don't want to spend too much time on the screen. Students are much more muted. You only allow students to speak because otherwise it's going to be chaotic. Only when someone raises a hand, etc. So it's much more controlled in that sense. So how are you going to bring all these back into online spaces? So I'll give you some suggestions. I mean, these are not solutions. I'm sure that you have found your own solutions, and I will be happy to listen to those solutions. But we'll go one by one in terms of feedback, problem solving, scaffolding, and effective support. Feedback, of course, when you are teaching English, comes in the form of feedback in terms of their language. So if they write something or if they speak something, then we can give them feedback in terms of language. Now, thankfully, there is a large amount of things available online for this kind of a feedback. Now, I'm sure that many of you have used Grammarly, which is a kind of a writing tool, which is used for checking the language, but also helping you to draft the language. Now, Grammarly is a very, very interesting tool. There is a free version and there is a paid version, but it is worth having it primarily because it helps not only in terms of online teaching, but even when we go offline, Grammarly can be extremely useful for giving feedback to the students on their writing. It is essentially a writing tool. It doesn't give you feedback on your speaking or whatever. But for speaking and other skills that you engage in a classroom, one of the things that you can't do online is ask them to speak and give them feedback immediately, because it's going to take up a huge amount of your internet time and screen time. So one of the ways that you can deal with it is ask them to brainstorm and come up with ideas of, let's say, how they're going to improve on their English. And there are, again, quite a lot of help available online. I've given you two examples over here, MindMap and Mindly. MindMap and Mindly both are basically organizers. So what they do is they help you organize ideas. So if you have floating ideas of how to write a paper or how to speak on a given topic, what you can simply do is you can type into MindUp and Mindly. Both of them are more or less the same. They help you organize. It helps you create a kind of a flow chart, which helps you to organize your ideas around a central idea. And if you can ask simply students to, if they are, for example, making a presentation online, to go to MindUp and Mindly, organize their ideas in the forms of points and share it with you. This can be shared. The data can be exported to other devices. And then you can give them feedback based on that. So again, something that helps you to give them feedback, but not use the actual classroom time for that feedback. The other two examples that I've given over here are examples of, I'm sorry. Is what is known as an online writing lab. These are called OWLs. OWLs are primarily, so the most famous OWL is by Purdue University. So if you go to the Purdue University OWL, if you just Google it, the Purdue University OWL helps quite a lot in writing. So you do not have to do it as a teacher. You can always direct your students to go to the OWL site and help them with that OWL. A recent one that has come up, which I have forgotten to put on the slide, is something called the Excelsior Online Writing Lab. It's called the Excelsior OWL, which again gives you writing help. So there is a lot of online help available, online support available in terms of language. It is not necessary now for the teachers, as we used to do earlier, to actually give support in terms of language in the classroom or taking assignments and marking them, etc. We can direct students to these kind of online apps or online tools where they can work on their own and then share their work with you, and then you can give them feedback based on their work, etc. I'm sorry, this one that you see right now is Reverso. This is a translation tool, but it also helps you organize your writing. Do check Reverso. It's a very interesting tool to have in your this thing. So the one that you see over here is Reverso. Okay, okay, I've got the Excel here out. Now, in terms of feedback, we also give them feedback on content. So if you are a literature teacher, if you're teaching literature in the classroom, we are also giving them feedback on content. Now, again, online, we do have a large amount of archives available, where again, we don't have to really worry too much about getting a book, because that's one of the major complaints that students have, that the book is not available. But because of many online archives now made available during the pandemic, like Project Gutenberg, Project Muse is paid. Certain books are available, which is free, but most of it is paid. The one that you see over here is what is known as the South Asian Archive, which has a large amount of text from India, Pakistan, Burma, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, etc. Free of cost. So you simply need to go to the archive to find these texts. And of course, you have the Internet Archive. You can't print that, but many of these books that you have to pay quite a lot of money for is available as digital text on the Internet Archive. So in terms of content, there is quite a lot of content available. Depending on your college or your university, you might have access to other digital content like EPG Pathshala or Swayam or MOOCs or JSTOR or other kinds of digital platforms that are available. So content is heavy. Remember, internet is very famous for its content. There is quite a lot of content available on the internet. As teachers, of course, our feedback is which content to look for. So we need to give them the critical skills to look for the better content. Rather than simply stopping at Wikipedia pages, we have to kind of guide them towards more content where they have to read, which are more authentic in that sense. Okay. I'm not saying Wikipedia is not authentic, but Wikipedia just gives you a bare framework. But as teachers, we'll have to give them feedback and better content available on the internet. So I've given you 4 examples over here. In terms of how to use technology for feedback, there are quite a few blogs that are there, which I hope that you visit. One is by Nick Peachy, and Nick Peachy gives you tips on how to use technology almost on a daily basis. There are hundreds of blogs on the internet on this, but these 3 that I have given keep on updating themselves, and they have successfully kind of remained there for a very long time. The second one is by Russell Stannard, and he again gives you tips on very simple tips on how to use technology to solve a problem. And the third one is by Larry Ferlazzo. The first 2 are from the UK. Larry Ferlazzo is from the US. And Larry Ferlazzo's blog again gives you very, very interesting tips on simple day-to-day problems that we face in online teaching. You can actually write to all of them, and they'll be more than happy to respond to you. So this is something for you. You could go to these blogs, and there are daily tips to solving a problem, and they are very common problems that all of us face as teachers. For example, how do I produce online test which can test content? And all 3 have a lot of blog posts now on testing and assessment and evaluation, etc. With very simple tools of technology. So I'm not going to go into details with there, but I hope that you can go to these sites and find for yourself the kind of tips that they give. Now, problem solving, that is the second thing in terms of the social that I talked about. Now, again, there are quite a lot of tools that are available. Google Docs, I'm sure that all of you are used to it now and you use Google Docs quite often. Now, Google Docs, one of the major things that you can do is you can set up a collaborative classroom on Google Classroom and then use Google Docs on that. So Google Docs helps you to collaboratively create something. And that collaboration is important for feedback, for problem solving. Because if there is a problem that the student is facing, the docs can help you negotiate that. If you are on the docs at the same time, or even if you are not there at the same time, the teacher can visit the docs and collaboratively build up something. Mentimeter, I'm sure that many of you have used. Again, Mentimeter is something that is used for you can set up a poll on the Mentimeter, you can set up feedback systems on the Mentimeter, and you can set up classrooms on the Mentimeter. So it can be used for different kinds of purposes. But again, the most easy thing about the Mentimeter, I wanted to do a poll over here, but I was not very sure about the possibility of doing it, so I didn't set it up. But do visit Mentimeter for setting up polls, for setting up feedback sheets, etc. Socrative, again, is something which helps you to set up a classroom of its own. It has a free version and a paid version. And of course, if people have used Kahoot, they would know that it can be set up to used to set up quizzes and games where you can set up a quiz on Kahoot and ask after your lesson your students to go to Kahoot, complete the quiz and send it back to you. So Kahoot automatically sends you the feedback based on the students' responses. So again, there are quite a few tools available online for problem solving, and that is that can bring back the social or the contextual that we have in the classroom, a face-to-face classroom, into the online space. If we integrate this with whatever we are using, if you are using a Google Classroom, everything of this can be integrated with the Google Classroom. If you are using a Zoom class, again, you can set it up in the Zoom as a link. If you are using whatever Google Meet, again, it can be set up over there, or a Skype call, whatever you're using for online teaching, all these things can be integrated within the platform. The third thing I said was scaffolding and developing cognitive skills. Now, scaffolding, you know, is, as I said, is a support mechanism. Now, there are different ways of scaffolding. Just to be very brief about it, scaffolding can be in terms of language support. For example, as I said, a dictionary or online encyclopedia, but it can also be in terms of your availability on different sorts of platforms. So I've given you some examples over here. The first one is Edmodo. The one that you see over here is Edmodo, and Edmodo is a mobile-based platform. It works like the Facebook. But it is very often used for education, especially language educators use Edmodo quite a lot. So Edmodo can be set up on your phones if you are using phones, or it can be set up even on a mobile device, on a tablet. And you can set up your classroom on Edmodo and do it. I know that some of you might have used Edmodo. It's been around for a few years now. EduBlogs is another thing that can be done. These are blogs that are especially meant for educational purposes, and they give you free space. There is another one which I don't mention over here, that is called Wikispace. So EduBlogs or Wikispaces can be used for setting up your material, your video, your audio, your podcasts, whatever you want to do in the online teaching. And the best thing is it has a comment section where the students can comment and you can give feedback on those comments. The third one is Evernote, that again you can use. I mean, these are things that you might have used at some point of time. And Moodle, Moodle is a platform that allows you to set up a classroom, a learning management system basically. Flubaroo again is something that can set up testing, especially MCQs work perfectly with Flubaroo. And of course, a Google Classroom. Nearpod is a podcast site where you can audio record your lectures and post it on the Nearpod. It hosts your lectures, and you can share the link with your students, and it is stored over there. And of course, Google Sites and others. The picture that you see over here is actually an experiment that was done by Sugata Mitra called the Granny Cloud experiment. What he did was he said that students, if they are left with computers on their own, can learn on their own, but they will need support. Now, the support does not necessarily mean that it has to be a teacher. So what he did was he used to project beam in a grandmother into the classroom. And he said we all know that what grandmother's functions are. A grandmother is there as a supportive person. So even if the child does something naughty, the grandmother always says it's okay, all right. So what he did was, even if the grandmother, even if it's a physics class and the grandmother doesn't know anything about physics, it doesn't matter, because the grandmother comes in there as a form of a support. So students would not ask questions about physics, but if the student said, okay, I made this, or I have a problem with this, what the grandmother did was provide emotional support to students. It became a very successful experiment, because he said that we do not need really a subject teacher, because a subject can be taught by computers. That's what Sugata Mitra believed. You need a supportive person in the classroom who is ready to listen to problems of students, who is ready to give emotional support to students, etc. And this is the experiment that he conducted. Again, something that you can read on if you go to Google Scholar. There are articles based on the Granny. It's called the Granny Cloud experiment. Okay, let's now move on to the emotional part of it, and that's why I ended with the emotional part of it. A bit of theory. People who know Vygotsky talked about the zone of proximal development, and I'll read out his definition of zone of proximal development. The distance between the actual developmental level as determined by independent problem solving and the level of potential development as determined through problem solving under adult guidance or in collaboration with more capable peers. What he basically meant was that in order to learn, to move from one level to another, what you need, so you are at a certain kind of a developmental level, which he calls the actual developmental level. And to move on to the next level, you need to solve problems, you need to potentially learn more language. So moving from standard 1, let's say, to standard 2, you need to have some sort of a cognitive development in order to move to that field. And he said this can be best achieved if there is some sort of a guidance available, some sort of a support available, either through adult guidance, either through teachers, let's say, or through peers or through friends. And he made it absolutely clear that in order for students to learn language, for language learning, it is absolutely important, what he called the zone of proximal development, that this zone is created. So you absolutely need some sort of an emotional support for the student to progress from one level to another level. If that support is lacking, then you do not have language learning at all. Otherwise, they will get stuck at a certain level because they don't have the support for that. And of course, Vygotsky had a major influence on language learning, especially in the development of different kind of language learning theories. We'll not go into that. What are the implications of this ZPD, the zone of proximal development? Now, one of the most important things, of course, is the presence of the teacher. So the teacher is absolutely important, or friends, peers, is absolutely important for language learning. The second thing, of course, what Vygotsky pointed out was that social interaction is very, very important for language learning. And of course, you needed support or supporting activities or scaffolding for language learning. So these are the three major implications of ZPD. Now, the question, of course, is when we teach online, how are we going to bring all this in? So I'll just try to point you towards what are the things that we can talk about and think about when we are dealing with these kind of things. The first thing that we need to understand is the context in which we are learning, the context in which we are teaching. Now remember, when we move online, the context changes. It is no more the classroom, it is no more the college, it is no more the university, it's probably my own house, the students' own house. The students may not be very willing to show their houses on screen, etc. So we need to negotiate that context in order to teach language. So that has to be kept in mind, as I began by saying that the context is very, very important to understand when we teach online. The second is, of course, the choices that I make. So what are the platforms that I'm choosing? Am I choosing Google Meet? Am I choosing Skype? Am I choosing Zoom? Am I choosing Microsoft Teams? It depends on what kind of access you have. And those choices will also determine the kind of interactions that I can have, because different platforms offer different forms of interactions. Now, we often forget that we often say that language is socially situated. But remember, technology is also socially situated because we use technology in a social situation. So when I say that technology is only a tool, it's not true, because technology also changes the way we teach, changes the way we learn. So the platform that I choose or the app that I choose, I gave you a few examples of apps, also determines the way I teach. So I have to be very careful in the choices of apps and platforms that I am making, and whether they are successful in creating the learning outcomes or the teaching outcomes that I want to achieve at the end of my teaching. The third thing is, of course, what kind of support am I giving? Just to give a personal example, in our university, for example, we record our lectures, all our lectures, and we keep them on our server space where students have access to those lectures whenever they want to have access to those lectures, if they want to go back to them. We also have what we call digital archives. For example, when we start a course, we put up almost all our material, all the reading material, all the reference material, everything on the Moodle platform. So our university has a Moodle platform, and we put up YouTube videos, everything that is related to what I am teaching onto the platform. Now the students are supposed to go and visit those, and there are ways to find out whether they have visited or not. And then come to the classroom. So it works as a kind of what is known as a flipped classroom model. So we tell them, okay, these are the materials available on Moodle. So they go to that material, look through them, and then they come to the online class for discussions and problem solving, etc. So if you can flip the classroom a bit by providing material, by providing support online beforehand, rather than telling that, okay, I'm going to teach them this and they have to come to my class or to be present online to understand what I'm teaching, then it probably doesn't work online that well. It can always happen in a classroom situation. If a student misses the class, there is always a possibility that a student catches up you in the canteen or catches up you in your office, and you again explain the thing to the student. But online, that's not possible. You can't set up a special meeting for a student. So what is best, that the best thing to do is probably to flip the classroom a bit. So what is known as a flipped classroom. You provide the support material beforehand, before you start teaching, and the students go there and refer to the material, and whatever you're teaching can be recorded and put up on the platform with obviously the security protocols that you have, and the students can have access to that. So it's always available to them. So it's so they don't have to constantly come back or tell you that, okay, we're finding it difficult. Of course, they are always free to do that, but the idea that the material is available is also a great support for the students. So that support mechanism has to be set up in a certain way. So that therefore it ties up with the second point that I'm making, the choices that I make. So the choices of platforms that I make is important for me to understand what I want to achieve at the end of my teaching. And the last point, as I promised, was the building communities of practice. Now, unfortunately, what has happened in India is that many of the teachers do excellent work. And I know of many teachers in Gujarat, many teachers around the country who have really done heroic efforts during the COVID-19 pandemic. Because remember, all of us went online almost overnight. So after 24th of March, when the lockdown was announced, we suddenly, all of us had to go online, and many of us were, well, let's say a bit comfortable. Some people were not very comfortable, and some people were not even prepared to go online. They found it very difficult to go online. Now, in these different kinds of situations that we are in, and we were in, and we are still in, what happened was we were left to our own devices. We tried to solve problems on our own, rather than build communities of practice. Now, one of the things that many universities across the world do is they provide platforms for teachers across the disciplines to come together and solve their problems. Unfortunately, until unless it is reported in India in a newspaper or on TV, we don't really know what sort of successful efforts or best practices teachers have engaged in. I'm sure that you have read reports about this teacher, English teacher in Assam, who would record everything on a USB drive and then go to the village headman's office. And the village headman had this TV in his office, which had a possibility of a USB jack. So this teacher would actually go there and jack in the USB device. Students, remember it was the lockdown, so students could not come. So she would put it on the public address system of the village and ask students to remain at home, and the public address system of the village would then teach students. I'm sure that you have heard this story from Gujarat. Again, in Gujarat, a primary teacher, because he wanted to continue with the classes and the students did not have access to the internet, he would again record all his lectures on his mobile phones, go to the local village panchayat office, and then use the public address system in the village to teach his students. I'm sure that you have heard stories about teachers who, of a teacher in West Bengal, who he went back to his village during the lockdown, and in his home he could not get internet connection. So he built a house for himself on the top of a tree where he could get internet. And he would take online classes on his mobile phone, stay the entire day on that tree house and teach. So you have got heroic stories coming out from different parts of the country. Unfortunately, we do not have a platform where we can share all these stories together. So as I told you, I came to know about these stories. I have been very interested in collecting these stories during the lockdown. And there are many other stories. But we come to know about them only when it comes in the newspaper or in the media. We do not have a platform where we can share these stories of success, and more importantly, the stories of failure, because the stories of failure will teach us what not to do when we are going online. So probably this is the right time for us to think about building communities of practice, and I'm sure that these kind of webinars where these organizations like SCOPE and KCG can bring together communities in such a way that they can start, talking to each other, start discussing with each other of what works in their classroom, what doesn't work in their classroom. And those communities of practice of English teachers across Gujarat would be a wonderful start to think about the possibilities of online teaching later. Just a last parting thought. People say that when we went online, it was okay. I mean, let me tell you something, that when teachers go online, and it has been shown by research that when teachers start adopting technology, what they tend to do is they tend to repeat what they have done in their classrooms. So for example, when teachers first started using PowerPoint presentations, what they did was they used to write by chalk on the blackboard. So there would be a lot of text on the blackboard. So when they started using PowerPoint presentations, there would still be a lot of text on the PowerPoint. So what they did was their skill of writing on the blackboard was transferred to the PowerPoint. But we all know that PowerPoint can do much more than simply writing, simply text. And that skill took a long time for teachers to master. So when we go online, remember, if we are going to follow the same modes that we do in the classroom, then probably it's not going to work as well as it used to do in the classroom. And that has led to a huge amount of teacher frustration, that students, we don't know what students are doing, they may not be listening to our lectures. So there are ways of negotiating that. So I've tried to show you some examples of some apps, of some online tools that are available that can help you engage the students as you used to engage them in the classroom. But of course, the nature of the platform is very different. This is a quote from Chris Poulsen, and Poulsen says, for most people, this will not free up a lot of time. It takes a lot of time to go online. In fact, most of the teachers that I have talked to in my university and across Gujarat, they actually say that it has increased our workload. You have to prepare more to teach online than we used to do in the classroom, which is true, because initially, at least, you need to spend a lot of time thinking through how you're going to go about it. Because the screen time and the internet time is expensive. So you will have to think through every part of your lecture, which was not required in that sense in a classroom, because you could always extemporaneously innovate in a classroom. Here in a screen time and internet time, you don't have time to do that. So it takes more planning, more organizing. So hopefully by the end of this session, if you go back to the apps that I shared with you, those will help you, not only you, but also students, to organize their thoughts and set up a more socially interactive class. I think that's all that I had to say. So thank you very much, and I would be more than happy to have your comments. Whatever.
Thank you, Atnu sir. Thank you very much for your valuable guidance. We have learned a lot, like various platforms and apps like Whole Online Writing Lab, Mindly, Grammarly, that platforms we can use, sir. And we learned how to get textbooks of literature online. This is the Internet Archive and Project Muse. They're amazing. Socrative, Google Docs, those are the platforms we can use for online teaching and for the upliftment of our students, sir. Thank you very much for your kind guidance to our teachers. And as all good things come to an end in life, so is the webinar. On behalf of Education Department, I take this opportunity to propose vote of thanks to those who have directly and indirectly contributed to this webinar on engaging learners in online remote teaching organized by SCOPE. Before ending our webinar series, I would like to welcome Shri A.U. Patel sir, who is former Vice Chancellor of Gujarat University and advisor to KCG. Moreover, he is a main in charge of Shodh program, and he has contributed a lot in education policy, and he is a member and chairman of various committees. So I request Shri A.U. Patel sir to say a few words to our faculties. Thank you very much, sir.
Good afternoon to everybody. Honorable Principal Secretary, respected M. Nagarjun Sahib, Director Higher Education and CEO SCOPE, Joint CEO SCOPE Mansi Madam, and all members present. I congratulate all that you have participated very nicely in the Learners Online Remote Teaching Series. Today we are at the concluding moment of 5 days long sessions on engaging learners in online teaching. We all know that we have been making substantial efforts to bring digitalization in our education system in order to match the requirements of 21st century. but the prevailing pandemic time has boosted the need of ICT in education very urgently. Digital education will be certainly a part in future as narrated in the education policy. And education through digitized mode is the need of the hour and also requirement of the new education policy. In any which way, we cannot proceed ignoring the digital mode of education when entire world already marched towards digital education. I congratulate Mansi Madam, Joint CEO Scope, and the Scope for successfully completing webinar series of engaging learners in online remote teaching. I extend my heartfelt thanks to PS Madam for giving her guidance from time to time on such matters. I also congratulate Nagarjun Sahib for the same. I am hopeful that the attendees of the sessions must have gained through a gainful knowledge. Experts are excellent, and I think that the information through the series and whatever they got will practically apply the same in their teaching and learning process. So our task to digitalize higher education will be easy. Since its inception, Scope has benefited many students and now heading to cross nearly 6,05,110 by the end of the academic year 2019-20. Total enrollment since April 2019 March 20 stands at 26,557 students. Entire credit goes to Mansi Madam, because not only this achievement but 39 new colleges have also registered as a Scope center. Scope has a uniquely designed exam scheme, ODOL, on-demand online examination, which facilitates students to appear for exams in between the regular exam sessions. MOU have been completed by Scope and GTU, which has already executed the entire MOU, and Scope has done agreement with Cambridge ESOL. So achievements of the Scope is perhaps according to my opinion, is better after joining Mansi Madam. As we all know that India has transformed itself into an information intensive society, and that is an increasing need to adopt to use of technology in the field of education. Our present government has also started Digital India campaign, and we have included that in NEP also. NEP 2020 has also emphasized more on the importance of technology in aiding teachers and students, bridging the language barrier between teachers and students, creating digital libraries, popularizing language learning as well as ensuring greater success to education, including differently abled children. Scope was formed with the intention to assist students of Gujarat in reading, writing, understanding and speaking English language, to empower students and train them in such a way that they feel confident while interacting in English, because English is the language of science, aviation, computers, diplomacy and tourism. Knowing English opens the window of entire world it increases students' chances of getting good job, not only in India or in corporate world, but throughout the world. English increases students' chances of getting not only good job, but multinational companies also expect that their employees must know best or excellent English. So the efforts made by Scope is always in on this direction, and we succeeded to impart good education, spoken English particularly in Gujarat. 53 countries are using this language, or they may have official English language. So we should not be behind, and our efforts through Scope should be to educate entire Gujarat as far as this language is concerned. I extend my heartfelt thanks to all the speakers. They have already completed their series and given very good efforts, and also they have participated. By a large number of students have and teachers have participated, and I think that this series is like good experience and also fun, and keep them engaged positively while teaching remotely. It is necessary to use strategies that engage students and learners in interactive and personalized activities. The activities can include use of interactive and dynamic sites, keep students social even in online classes, feedback protocols, etc. Reset all important aspects must have been discussed during this session. With this hope that you all must have learned well on how to keep learners engaged in online remote learning particularly, and particularly to fulfill the objectives of the scope. I would like to end my words here with thank you very much, Mansi Madam, for giving me chance. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir, for your valuable words. Thank you very much. Now, Atnu sir, there are some questions from viewers. They want to ask, is Kahoot concerned with gamification?
Sorry, is
Kahoot concerned with gamification?
I mean, you can set up games over there, but gamification as a concept is a method of teaching language. So gamification can be done in different ways. For example, you can use a certain kind of a computer game or an online game, or what are known as massive open online games. And you can ask your students to become one of the earliest examples of this was something called Second Life. And Second Life allowed you to create your own avatars, and students can take avatars over there and have interactions with different kinds of people and learn language as they go along. So gamification is a large concept. Kahoot can be one part of it. Kahoot is generally used to set up quizzes, but you can also set up games over there. There are other ways of doing it. WebQuest, for example, helps you set up games, etc. So gamification can be done in different ways. Kahoot can be used for gamification as well.
Okay, sir. One more question. Sir, name some different applications and websites that are useful for teaching, sir.
For teaching?
Yeah.
I gave you 3 websites that I mentioned over there. One is the Nick Peachy Blogspot. The second one is the Russell Stannard one. And the third one is Larry Ferlazzo. Now, all these 3 people work in the field of English language education. So if you go to these 3 sites, they will be very helpful, because the use of technology that they promote over there is for teaching English. So all the technology that they talk about is for teaching of English. So I therefore mentioned these 3. There are hundreds of others, but these 3 I found very useful.
Okay, sir. So thank you, sir. Atnu Bhattacharya sir, Ayub Patel sir, I express my special thanks to Honorable Anju Sharma Madam, Principal Secretary, Higher and Technical Education, Sri M. Nagarajan Sir, Director of Higher Education and CEO Scope, Professor Ayub Patel Sir, Advisor KCG, and to all the dignitaries and invited speakers for their gracious presence and their valuable inputs which they have delivered. We are really enlightened with your knowledge and presence. I wish that this webinar helped you in the improvement of online teaching. This webinar series will help educators to make their online teaching interesting. I once again thank you all and express my sincere thanks. Thank you very much. Thank you.